Hey, everybody. Thanks for hanging out with us. Lori and Julie here. Donnie Love is here. And Tony Ortega is joining us. And, of course, he has his blog, The Underground Bunker, and he's been holding Scientology's feet to the fire for a good long time. Tony,
you have, Tony.
Nice to have you with us.
It's so great to be back with you, Laura and Julia.
Okay, so Tony, we are absolutely obsessed with Leah Remini, Scientology and the Aftermath on A&E. And last week we saw, the lady that you wrote about, the Unbreakable Miss Lovely, Paulette Cooper, was featured.
That's right.
In last week's show. But this documentary series, it's so powerful, the storytelling and how, I guess, it seems easier to understand through this vehicle that Leah is showing us. There's something about Leah and her star power and her ability to present these stories and the way she reacts to them that I think people are really connecting to. Because, you're right. Some of these people that we're seeing in these shows we know pretty well. Paulette Cooper, obviously, last week. Legendary journalist who wrote about Scientology in the 70s and nearly paid for it with her life, which is the subject of my book. And then last night, we saw Mark and Claire Headley, who, if you follow Scientology news, are well known for the amazing escape story they went through. But even though these are not new stories, Leah is presenting them in a way that's reaching a whole new audience, a massive audience. And I think it's really presenting a challenge to Scientology that it's never faced before.
It's kind of interesting, Tony, when you say that, because she sits down and as someone who has spent 35 years believing she's saving the world, and you're getting really all the insights to what you're told as a Scientology, you kind of feel like you're experiencing it with her. And then how she was so fooled. And last night talking about how you have to go to these 4 annual meetings a year and pay up the wazoo and wear these formals, and then you see behind the scenes the Wizard of Oz making the videos of BS about all the good Scientology's doing in the world, and it's like the curtain was pulled back and she's just in shock.
Yeah, I think that's another thing that makes it such a good show is that she is learning along with us. She's finding out these things that she never knew about her own organization, and that's because Scientology is all about information control. A celebrity like Leah really isn't going to know what's happening on the international base, where you might have 12-year-olds, 11-year-olds working 90-hour weeks for pennies an hour. They're just abandoned by their parents. I mean, there's just these incredible stories that have been coming out, and Scientologists are very good at cutting themselves off from that kind of information, because they know if they start to poke around and question what Scientology is doing, they could find themselves the subject of an interrogation that can last weeks and cost them thousands of dollars.
Yeah,
so they're trained early on not to question anything.
Yeah, it's really amazing to me. When is Scientology going to get its religious status as an organization? When is somebody going to investigate them?
We know that, the IRS gave them tax-exempt status as a religious organization in 1993 in order to get that. And also the IRS forgave them $1 billion tax bill.
Wow.
Because they had not been paying taxes since the 60s. So Scientology, the IRS completely caved. But Scientology did have to sign a very complex agreement with the IRS, an agreement that we know Scientology violates every day of the week.
Right.
If the IRS just reopened that investigation, looked at what Scientology was doing, I don't think there's to be any question that the IRS would have plenty of grounds to reverse that decision and take away taxes and status. But, it's not just the fact that, a crime's happening and a cop needs to go and look at it. There needs to be a lot of political pressure on the IRS to do anything. And that's always been kind of the challenge is, are enough people interested? Well, Leah's changing the game because she's bringing this story to so many people. I think that, that maybe we're getting closer to that case being reopened.
You know who else is very compelling on that show is Mike Rinder, who is in Scientology for 46 years. He's because he knows all the dirty tricks, because that's what he rose to. I mean, it's just really must-watch TV. It's been so fascinating.
They're a great duo, because, Leah's learning what really happens in Scientology, And Mike knew what was going on in Scientology, coming to grips with it. He's apologizing for it. And his own family's been ripped apart as a part of it. I mean, that's the thing that's, I think, also compelling about this show is these are real families that are suffering, and people that have been separated from loved ones, and people that have been impoverished, like Mary Kahn. And, Leah's just doing such a good job presenting it. One of the things that just really struck me was when they were talking to Mary Kahn, and Mary was talking about trying to hold her family together and the struggle she was going on through. And Mike Linder just broke down and started bawling.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
And it was such good television, because how often do you see that? And I was really blindsided by that. And I can tell you that the producers kind of like went around and around, should we really include that or not? I'm glad they left it in. Because you could see that Mike Rinder was really emotionally struggling with how his own family had been torn apart, and how he's partly responsible for what all this kind of thing that happened.
Right.
So in that way, this show is so powerful and real, and that's what I'm seeing on Twitter. Are people talking about how remarkable it is? Because it's reality TV, right? But it's just so real and so emotional.
Yeah, and I think because of the way that this kind of series allows you to tell the stories, how who's ever, how they're producing these stories to tell. Like last night, hearing from Claire Headley about how if you're in Sea Org and you're a woman and you get pregnant, they schedule an abortion for you right then and there.
And she's not. Other women have come out and said they were coerced, they were forced, they had no choice, because you cannot have a baby when you're in the Sea Org, and that was a Sea Org policy from about 1982 to 2009 when the news first came out that they were forcing some abortions on these women.
Yeah. It's incredible. And even last week with David Miscavige's dad talking about how he got a Kindle from David, and David didn't know it was a Kindle Fire, so it had the internet. Web, it had the internet, and he was able, because they keep the internet away from everybody. I mean, it was just like, he was like, when he got that was really his out, even though it ended up,
It's always interesting to ask an ex-Scientologist what was the moment, what was it when everything sort of came crashing down and you realized that this whole thing was a lie and a fraud, and for many of them it's that moment when they had access to information,
right?
And for Ron, it was like, oh my goodness, this thing has the internet on it. Let me look around. Let's type in Scientology and what comes up.
I mean, and it's so odd, Tony, because there is free will here. I mean, Leah was a person out in society, but would donate, had to be there 2.5 hours every day and forego vacation stuff. But she had access to the internet. But they are told from such an early age that everything out there is lies.
Yeah, they're trained that if they see things they're not supposed to see, they will be hauled into ethics. They will be interrogated for days at a time, and then they have to pay for it.
Yeah.
Right.
I mean, at one point, Leah raised an objection to something David Miscavige had done at the wedding of Tom Cruise and Katie Holmes. For doing that, she was hauled down to Clearwater, and her interrogation lasted 3 months.
Wow.
And she had to pay $300,000 for it.
You know what? In a way, I'm glad that happened, though, because that's what really started to piss her off, and we needed someone to get pissed off. How about, Tony, what is the deal? We know Lisa Marie Presley was brought into Scientology by her mom when she was like 11. We know she left because she wrote the songs, the album. Yeah. But she never speaks about it. Is it because the Elvis Presley estate has more money than Scientology, or how?
You know what? I wrote more about her. I don't know if you saw it. There's been some really interesting developments with her. Ron Miscavige is really close with her. And she was integral in his decision to write his book.
Okay.
And she actually made some of the material from his book get leaked early.
I remember that. I remember you writing about this.
Yeah, she was very intimately involved in that. She's not only out, she is involved in trying to get information out about David Miscavige. She tried to have a showdown with Miscavige in October 2014, and he didn't show up. But he sent his sisters to scream at Lisa Marie. She went back to her hotel and told the people there, I am no longer a Scientologist.
Yeah.
I mean, you talk about a dramatic scene. And my sources, which are very good, tell me that she made sure that Priscilla and Riley came out with her. But the reason why they're not saying anything publicly, there's a family reason that I can't reveal yet. But basically, Scientologists often find themselves in a situation where they're out, where they're pissed off, but they can't say anything because there's still some reason that they need to keep from getting the full retaliation from the church.
Mm-hmm. Yeah,
and usually isn't it that another family member is still in?
Yeah, but in this case, it's slightly different than that.
Really?
I can tell you more.
I want
wish
to know.
Lisa,
I'm dying right now.
We would love Lisa Marie and Leah Remini to just take it on. They would be a force to be reckoned with because, Lisa Marie, like Leah Remini, since she was a kid, and I think Elvis would have just died if he'd known because he would have been totally against Scientology.
Yeah, I'm really glad that she's out. She struggled lately. She and her husband broke up.
Yep.
And she went to rehab. And
Yep.
I think it's been a tough year for her. I don't know if we're going to ever hear from her publicly about this, but I do know that behind the scenes, she has been directing some of what's been going on over the last year as far as the information coming out about the Church of Scientology.
Well, we're glad that we love to read the Underground Bunker, and we thank you for doing the recaps of the Leah Remini Scientology and the Aftermath every week, and it's just good to talk to you, and we'll stay in touch.
Okay, thanks for having me on.
Okay,
thanks,
that's
Tony.
Tony Ortega, and the Underground Bunker is his blog, and of course the show is on A&E on Tuesday nights.
It's amazing.